You merely adopted the hoodless life. Well, I was born in it, molded by it. Before I was a man, all I knew was hoodless driving. Oh, what's up? How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to talk about Wastegates and also CO2 boost control. I get a lot of questions about that and exactly like how it works. Let's say, dude, Sai was nice enough to send us his hand-me-downs. So we've got some precision turbo Wastegates that we're going to be replacing the On3 ones with. I discovered on a ride along with Matthew a exhaust leak on that side over there. Well, I thought it was an exhaust leak, but it was actually the turbo was leaking. The turbo was leaking. If I still have that clip, I'll link it here so you can listen. Not link it. I'll play it. I'll play it here so you can listen. We had this wastegate got stuck. I thought it was an exhaust leak, and I was like, "You hear that exhaust leak?" We were driving back. And
because I'm blind, I couldn't hear it.
So yeah, because you're blind, you couldn't hear it. So I got out of the car with it running, and as soon as I bent over the fender, I couldn't hear it anymore. And I was like, wait a second. And I put my hand over the top of it, and the exhaust is just coming straight out. So I got a wastegate stuck open. We'll get that finished. I'm going to take off these On3 wastegates, and we're going to kind of compare them side by side. They should be a direct replacement, so I shouldn't have any issues there. But I'll get these ones taken off, and then I'll throw them up here on the bench. Also, if you haven't entered to win yet, go check out the video, would have been 2 videos ago, to see how to get yourself entered to win one of these Austin Piston Clock Dealy Whoppers. This one's got a little fun color to it. Look at that. The anodized color is changed from, supposed to be black, but it's more of a purple. Interesting. Okay, so these are wastegates. Those are the ones that I'm going to put on, the precision ones. These are the On3 ones. So we're going to swap over these fittings right here to this old one, okay, or the newer ones rather. Essentially, and we can kind of talk about, man, I don't even know where to start for CO2 boost control. Let's start in the car. All right, in the car, we have the CO2 bottle right here with the supply line. This is the supply line that runs down to you can see the top of one of the solenoids right there. There's an increase and a decrease solenoid, and they're controlled by this boost controller right here. It's dark in the car, so I decided I'm gonna draw up this handy dandy diagram. Okay, essentially, there's a CO2 bottle right here, boom, boom. The CO2 bottle supplies CO2 to these 2 solenoids right here, which is controlled by the boost controller. What the boost controller does is it tells this solenoid to let CO2 in, and it doesn't open this one. So this solenoid here stays closed. So the boost controller says, let CO2 in, and it says, okay, and then it pressurizes this line that is connected to the top of this wastegate and the top of that wastegate. So once the boost controller starts to see via this reference line right here, because this is also connected to the top of one of the wastegates, once it starts to see the targeted pressure that it wants, then it stops feeding and then uses this decrease to balance any surges. So if it overshoots it a little tiny bit, it'll vent some of this air out to that, or sorry, some of this CO2 out to the atmosphere. That way that the pressure inside of the top of this wastegate and the top of this wastegate are exactly what you want. Now, essentially, how a wastegate works, that's how CO2 boost control works. Now, how a wastegate works is it uses the boost reference from the turbo, how much pressure is inside of the charge system, to open and close this valve right here that's in the bottom of this. And you can see, whoops, to open and close this valve right here, which lets the extra or excess exhaust gases escape around the turbo without actually going into the turbo. So once the wastegate reaches what is called gate pressure or spring pressure, so it has this vacuum port right here. This is the bottom port, which is what's connected to the turbo. That you can see in there, that little orange portion, that's the bottom of the diaphragm. It's kind of like a balloon in there. So the balloon inflates with the pressure, which pulls this up right here, this this valve. That's how it controls the boost. That's called gate pressure. Now how you control boost is by using the regular gate pressure. This is it still is going to supply boost pressure to this bottom side of the wastegate. But what you're doing now is, instead of just the spring pressure, which I'll open this up later, actually I'll do it right now. So taking apart now, this is this, I talked about this earlier. This is a mistake that I made. When I did this extra port up here on the top, I thought I could do it in the side, but as you can see right here, the fitting would go too far in and it would hit on the spring, and that's exactly what happened. It also hit on the top of this, on the top of the inside of the diaphragm, and it wouldn't let the wastegate open, because when the valve lifted up, it hit the fitting that I put in there. Okay, so essentially we were talking about how the pressure, the boost reference pressure, fills the bottom portion of the diaphragm, which if you look, there's that bottom fitting right there. I said you could see the orange part of the diaphragm, and here it is. This is the diaphragm. Let me set this up so I can use 2 hands. This diaphragm that's in here, it has the vacuum port underneath it, and there's 2, one 180 degrees from it. That's just for, as far as clocking goes, which one is easier to use. So one is capped, and the other one you use for your boost reference, and the boost reference is what is used, and that's how it opens the gate. So this diaphragm, the orange diaphragm right here that you can see, is pinched between, as a gasket, between the top portion of the hat and the bottom portion of the hat right here inside this groove. So just like that right here, it's pinched, and then when the boost reference inflates this like a balloon, like I said, it pushes up. See, it inflate and push up like a balloon on the spring that sits right here. Now this is a 5-pound spring, which means once this hat is on here and this thing is clamped all the way down, it takes 5 psi, so 5 pounds per square inch of boost reference in order to overcome that spring and start to push open. And it's not like an instant thing, so as soon as it makes 5 pounds, it doesn't crack out, it doesn't shoot wide open. It progressively starts to get this nice even balance between, if you look in there, you can see between kind of like cracked open, and when it kind of gets a boost spike, it opens a little bit more, and then it'll let out the exhaust gases and the turbos won't spool as much, and then it'll kind of equalize, and it kind of gets this like happy medium right here, where it's kind of halfway cracked, halfway open, and it kind of goes back and forth, and that's how it regulates the boost. It regulates how much pressure that the turbos actually make. So the issue that I had was one of these was stuck open. So it was stuck cracked open like this. It was letting exhaust gases pass by the turbo before I wanted it to, which is why we're replacing them. So going back to the CO2 boost control, these 2 top ports, one of them is used as the feed, which normally there's just the spring pressure right here. There's just the spring pressure. Normally there's just the spring pressure that's holding that valve down, but then when you add CO2 pressure above the diaphragm, on top of, people say put 5 pounds on the gate. What they mean is, in addition to the spring, they put 5 psi of air in this space with the spring. So now the boost has to overcome not only the 5 psi from the spring, it also has to overcome, or the pressure from the spring rather, it also has to overcome the 5 psi that you put on the gate, which at low boost numbers like that, I net about 10 pounds of boost. When I put 5 pounds on the gate with a 5-pound spring, I net about 10 pounds of boost, which it doesn't always work so evenly like that. Sometimes you have to put 10 pounds on the gate in order to get 10 pounds of boost, and that just all depends on your setup, your back pressure, and how easy it is for your car to make the boost. But so this port right here, the second port, is used as the reference. So if we go back to this diagram here, it says gate reference. That's what the second port is used for. So the boost controller can see exactly how much PSI that it's put on top of the gate. And you don't want to tee it in, because yes, you could, if you're looking at this the same way that I am, this is easily just be a T right here instead of 2 ports on top of the wastegate. But the problem is, when this rushes the CO2 into the CO2 line on top of the gates, it can sometimes spike and cause you know, some pretty, you know, it'll spike or be lower, or it doesn't go as evenly. And this open space inside of here, all of this open space acts as a diaphragm to even out those kind of, like, if you want to think of like the pulse lengths from the CO2, because it's an open close really fast type of thing, like open and closed. It's not like, doesn't like crack open and let in just the perfect right amount of CO2. It lets a big gulp in, and then lets another big gulp and another big gulp until it reaches that target pressure. And this open space, or this diaphragm inside here, allows as a buffer, and it evens out those wavelengths. So this will be really pulsy and uneven coming into the wastegate, and once the pressure gets in here, it evens out, it stops bouncing around, and you get a much better, much smoother, much more accurate reading if you don't tee your CO2 reference in with your boost control reference. That's why it's important to not do that, to have that second port. As you can see, so a lot of turbos come with them, but if they don't, you just have to add one. It's just 1/8 inch thread pitch, and then you just drill a hole and you tap another place for a fitting. So that's what these lines connect to the CO2. So that's CO2 boost control in a nutshell. The other way you can look at it is magic comes out, goes inside this whirly boy. Extra magic goes out of the wastegate, and then it just makes horsepower. That's how the other easy way to think about it. That spent 6.5 minutes explaining it, when you can just say magic goes into the turbo, the excess magic leaves the turbo from the wastegate, and you get to the same place. See, talking about it is one thing, but now I'm going to show you guys. It's proof of concept, or proof of the concept. Boost controller, what we're going to do, the CO2's turned on, so I am going to set this up for a test. Time 0, rate of 30. We're going to go to, these should be 3-pound springs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 pounds. So that's what it's going to target, and then we will be able to see the wastegate open. This is going to accomplish 2 things. It's going to show us, 1, that the CO2 system is not leaking, and 2, that how the wastegate actually works. So the passenger side is set up just to close the loop, and we're going to actually talk about the driver side. So I'm going to show you first without charging it. So right now, oops. So this side is gonna, actually I'm gonna leave this, so this side is uncapped, okay? Or sorry, it doesn't have a boost reference. All it is closing the loop. So this side is not gonna open, but this side over here, I'm gonna try to position it so you can watch, so you can see, hopefully, the actual wastegate valve open. I'm gonna turn it, position it, so maybe you guys can see right in there. I'm gonna hook this up. It's right there. So you guys can see in there. Let's get a flashlight. You can see right in there, that's the valve, that straight portion right there. So when I charge the system, it's gonna get 5 PSI, which inside here are 3-pound springs. So it's gonna be more than the spring pressure, so this should crack open. So that's what we're gonna do while I'm also checking to make sure that the other side doesn't leak. So I'm gonna go charge it and then you'll be able to see it happen. So you can see it pulsing, which is telling me two things. One, that there's a leak somewhere, so that my fittings, because it shouldn't be pulsing like that, it should just be holding the pressure. So one, I'm leaking, and then two, these are 3-pound springs, but so they're starting to open at 3 pounds, but they're not all the way open until probably like 5 pounds, maybe 6 pounds. So I'm gonna find out where this leak is and then fix that. I learned a little bit more about wastegates than I intended to. Okay, so we'll start with what I found. And what I found was, let's see if this is the piece. Nope. 50-50 shot. Wrong every time. Here's the old diaphragm, and it's got a tear in it. Okay, that was the precision one, the older one. It had like a little pinhole in it, and I'm not sure. Like I said, these were like hand-me-downs. I'm not sure how the pinhole got there, but so I got to looking at this. This is the assembly right here. That the diaphragm is. I didn't know this going into it. That this is how wastegates, how this assembly was. But essentially, right here in the bottom of this is this. It sandwiches the diaphragm. This threads into that portion right here. This is what the spring sits on top of, and then what the valve seats inside of here. So, having found out that there was a hole in it, and there's not really anything, wastegates are with a leak like that. I could have probably ran it easily. It wasn't leaking that much, but once my idle hands got busy with it, I totally destroyed it, of course. Once I had ripped it, then I decided that I was going to try to take it apart and learn something about it. And then I tried to swap some of the on-3 parts into the precision wastegate, or on-3 into the precision wastegate. Found out there were a lot of the parts are pretty close. Like this diaphragm is the exact right size diaphragm for the on-3 wastegate. So then I was like, well, what if I can take apart the on-3 wastegate and use its diaphragm? So the on-3 one, though, is not as meant. Well, first, the precision one is not meant to come apart. It's obvious from the manufacturer. You have to have a special tool. This is a 16 millimeter, and you have to have a special tool. It's like a triple pin, kind of like what you would use for like a grinding wheel to loosen the discs on a grinding wheel, sort of. But it's 3 pins, and it is probably something that Precision has a copyright on or something like that, because they probably don't want people replacing these on their own. But I was able to, in a vise, I was able to hold it, the sides of it, hard enough to where I could hit the top of this with an impact, and then it did eventually start spinning off, and that's how I was able to get this portion apart. The on-3 one doesn't have anything, so what I did was I welded a little 1/2-inch aluminum bar right across the top of it, so I could hold it, and then use a 19 millimeter wrench right here in order to separate them. And then that's what left me with a good diaphragm that doesn't have any holes, that I'm now going to put a sandwich on here and then reassemble the precision wastegate, and then I'll pressure test it and see if it's I'm going to pressure test it and see if it's leaking. Who knows? I don't know. I probably did all of this I could have ruined the wastegate, and you know, I would have just had a little bit of a leaky one to begin with, and that probably would have been fine, but idle hands. Okay, so I tested them out. They are not leaking, so that's good. Turns out you can put the guts of an on-3 wastegate inside of a precision wastegate, and I would assume then therefore vice versa. Possibly. There's a couple of differences. The valve, the actual valve for the wastegate on the on-3 It's a little bit longer than the Precision one, as well as the inside hat portion of the diaphragm is a little bit taller right here. But I mean, they're pretty similar on the inside. Just one's Chinese. Big wrap it up though for today's video. I'm gonna take this on a drive, double check. We've got the no clock shootout class tomorrow if it doesn't rain. So Clinton, watch out. Actually, you're not gonna be there, you said. Whoever else, watch out. I might make some people go for a drive on the street. I'll definitely throw down $100. We're gonna double check, make sure that some of these cars are actually street cars. So y'all are on. This is officially notice for street cruising, not necessarily that I'm gonna gap you or anything like that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next upload.